Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Bean, and today we're gonna do a recent wrap-up video. Now, it's the middle of the month, and I recognize that, but my reading has not been fast lately, but I have read some pretty large books, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I'm actually gonna go all the way back to, I think, March, because I don't think I've done a wrap-up since February. So we're gonna go back to March and like the past 2.5 months. We're gonna go through the books that I've read, which I think it might be like 8 or 10, something. I don't know, honestly, off the top of my head, but 6 of them I own physically, so that's cool. But we're gonna start way back with a book that I read for school, and that was a graphic novel that I actually checked out from the library as an ebook, which was kind of cool. And that is The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich. This is by Muniz, and I honestly enjoyed this book very much. It was very cute. There were cheese puns all around. I gave it a 5 out of 5. If you want to see, so I have an Instagram, but my Instagram was hacked, so don't follow that one. I'm gonna start a new one at some point, I think. I have not been posting there anyways. But I had started posting my reviews up there, and so it's really unfortunate that it just got hacked right now. So I cannot access it anymore, and I have not been able to access it for a couple days now. So fun stuff there. Tried to figure it out. It's not working, so I'm kind of giving up on it for now. But overall, I really, really liked this book. This is not a series or anything like that, but it's really lighthearted. It's a YA graphic novel. Our main character is the Lady Camembert, who here is depicted with she's the one with the dark hair, and her father dies, and in order to avoid getting married off to some random dude she doesn't know, she ends up leaving with one of her servants, I think her lady-in-waiting or something, and she ends up masquerading as a man. And so it's just a really cute story how she meets the princess of this land, and it's very sweet, it's very cute, very fast read. I highly, highly recommend it. The next book that I read was a one that I have, and that is a bookbox book, and that was Bone Pendant Girls by Terry S. Friedman. I got this in the Twisted Retreat box, so it is a very, very pretty book, and this is the main reason I really wanted to read it. I really wanted to know if I was going to like this one. I gave it a 3.25. It's not bad. It's a good story. It felt as though I was reading a Criminal Minds episode almost completely. Like, that was essentially the story. This follows a girl named Andy who's always been able to kind of talk to ghosts, maybe see them. I honestly don't remember. I don't think she can see them, but she could always talk to ghosts ever since she was a child. It's a gift that she inherited from her mother. And this one, she ends up stumbling upon 2 pieces of jewelry that are engraved bone with 2 girls' faces on them, and the girls are trying to communicate with her. So you get 2 different points of view. You get a couple of different points of view. You get Andy's point of view, you get our villain's point of view, and you get one of the girls' points of view. So it's very interesting. It's well done, I think, and I am intrigued to see what else this author has. But for me, it wasn't anything super special. I'm not exactly sure why it was in a horror box. I would consider this much more of a thriller, maybe a paranormal thriller, but I wouldn't count this as a horror book, honestly. But it was very well done. I did enjoy it. It didn't stick out as anything special for me, and it did drag a little bit at times, and I found some of the characters a bit obnoxious, I'm not gonna lie. But overall, it was a good book. I really, really like this cover a lot more. I'm still debating if I'm going to keep it, though, I'm not gonna lie. The next book that I read and finished was another one for school, and that was The Cherished by Patricia Saffron Ward. This one I gave 3.5 out of 5. I liked it alright. This is a horror novel. This is a horror novel that is compared to the Hazelwood and Wilder Girls. I have read the Hazelwood and I can see the comparison there. Our main character's name is Jo, and she is like 14, 15 years old or something like that. And she all of a sudden inherits her grandmother's home, which is a home that she has not been to since she was like 6 years old. She does not remember much of it. And there's a whole bunch of mysterious things connected to the home, but her and her mother travel to go see this house that she has inherited. And basically throughout this book, I had to remind myself that teenagers make really, really stupid decisions because they're not smart yet. Teenagers just in general, that's the way it is, especially in books. They don't make good decisions a lot of the time. I will say this is probably a very accurate representation of the things that Jo is going through in this book. There's a lot more than just the horror aspect to it. Again, for me personally, I saw the twist because I know mythology and that made sense in my head. But it was a good story overall, honestly, and I liked how it played into. I liked the added parts of the mythology that was thrown in, and I think it was well done. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. It's not a book that I'm going to buy, but it is one that I do appreciate. The next book on my list is one that actually honestly made one of my favorite books of the year, and that is Darius the Great is Not Okay. This is by Adib Khorram, and this is the first book in a duology, I believe it is. This follows Darius, who is half Parisian teenage boy who his family has just learned that his grandfather, who lives over in Iran, is dying of he's going to be passing away soon, and so they want to make a trip over to visit him. But Darius realizes he knows nothing about the culture there. He has not been brought up speaking Farsi. He has not been brought up being observant of the culture itself at all. And it's a lot about him struggling with his identity as he's traveling to a place where he knows he doesn't fit in, even though he should at least a little bit. It's a lot about family. It's a lot about struggles his parents are going through as well. And it doesn't focus on it, but Darius has depression. And it's really interesting because as a person with depression myself, you don't often see books, especially YA books, that show depression as something that doesn't control your life. It is a very active part of your life, and as we see, Darius actually takes antidepressants, but his depression does not define his life. He is not letting it define his life, and I really appreciated that kind of representation in this book. It did get a 5 out of 5 from me, mostly because I myself have never felt so seen in a book. And it's not so much because of the cultural heritage, but because of the mental health representation and all of that. So that was really, really cool to see. It was a very interesting take on this. I loved the story. I thought that the storytelling was excellently done, and I cannot recommend this book enough for anybody. So this was, again, another one I read for school, but I really, really enjoyed this one, and I highly recommend it. The next book that I read and finished was Raiders of the Lost Heart by Jo Segura. I ended up reading this one pretty quickly. I gave it a 3.75 out of 5. It was good. It was advertised to me as Indiana Jones meets Lara Croft, basically, but romance, and I guess I could see it, though the Indiana Jones Lara Croft stuff didn't really happen until the end. It was a fine story. I do wish it was more fleshed out. It really felt very much like it was very focused on the main characters, which most books are focused on the main characters, but it felt like the side and back characters were just kind of thrown in there and almost forgotten, which is unfortunate, but I also understand why that happens. This follows Dr. Corey Matthews, who she is an archaeologist who specializes in a specific Aztec king ruler, and she has spent her entire life studying and making predictions as to what happened to this specific person, and she's kind of based her entire career off of it. She's invited on a dig by an old classmate that she absolutely despises for legitimate reasons. He's not exactly a good person, and he knows it, in order to find this temple that they're looking for. And it's very well done, honestly, as far as the historical aspects go. He did screw her over royally before the book starts, and you do learn about that, and oh, buddy, oh, not the best move on his part. So I really liked the characters in here. I just wish that the side characters were more fleshed out. And honestly, it kind of dragged for me at bits. I found that I probably could have skimmed parts and I still would have gotten the entire story. I believe this is a debut. We will be seeing Jo Segura at the convention we're going to in September, so that's exciting. But overall, it was fine. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I'd read another of her books for sure. 3.75. All right, the next book that I'm going to talk about, I'm trying to kind of go through these quickly because there are more of them than I thought. And the next one I'm going to talk about is Llens by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the third and final book. I finished a series in the Foundry Side trilogy. Guys, I finished a series! Like, that's kind of crazy. That's awesome. I love it. This is the third and final book in the Foundry's trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. And the first book in the series is called Foundry Side, which I actually lent out to someone and I still don't have it back, which happens, but I'd like it back. Because all my copies match. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5. It was not my favorite of the series, which is fair. It's also the only book in the series that's not heist-based, which, again, when you read the book, it makes a lot of sense why it's not heist-based. I don't want to give you a summary of this book because it is the third and final book in a trilogy. The first one in the series, Foundry Side, follows Sanchia, who is a thief who has an engraved plate in her head that allows her to hear basically the thoughts of objects. And so anything she touches, she can understand what it's saying and what it's feeling and that kind of such. And it makes for a very inconvenient life. She has to wear gloves all the time, and even clothes she has to be very careful on where they come from because it's always touching her and she knows what they're thinking. So her life is basically her trying to steal enough stuff in order to sell and get enough money to leave the city she lives in and get a surgery to get that plate removed from her head. That is her whole goal. She just wants to live a normal life. And then she does a job for someone and gets a box, and underneath, in the base of the box, there's a trick door, and she finds a key, and that key starts to talk to her. And that is the basis of this series, and a lot happens. This is a very intense series, a very fast-paced, very quickly moving, a lot of action, it gets more political as it goes along, which does tend to happen in these types of fantasy sci-fi stories. I would classify this as a fantasy book. Highly, highly recommend this. This is his second trilogy, and I did start the most recent one as well. Robert Jackson Bennett is quickly becoming an autobi author for me. I absolutely love the way that he depicts people, and honestly, I found it very well done. So, yes, highly recommend. I did give this a 4 out of 5. Probably my least favorite out of the 3, but the fact that I still give it a 4 out of 5 as my least favorite should tell you something about this series. The next book that I read was also a completion to a series, look at me go, and that was Under the Smoke-Strewn Sky by A. Deborah Baker. This is the fourth and final book in the Up and Under series. The Up and Under series follows two children who are walking to school one day completely independent of each other. They have never met before, never really crossed paths. They are opposites on the scale of, like, one super nitpicky and very clean, very, like, proper child, and the other one is a wildflower hippie child, basically. And they stumble upon a wall that is physically blocking them from walking to school. And so, as children do, they went up and over the wall and found themselves in the Up and Under, which is a fantastical world where they had to make friends along the way, make enemies, and they had to figure out how to get out. And it's a 4-book series. It is very whimsical. It is very sweet. And A. Deborah Baker is a pen name for Shauna McGuire. So if you didn't know that, now you do. And I absolutely loved this short little series. They're all basically novellas. I don't think any of them are over 220 or 250 pages. Like, they're not long books. And they don't take long to read. They're a lot of fun. I listened to the audiobooks because my library had all of them, so I listened to them. And I really cannot recommend this enough. It was so much fun. It was such a fun series, a great time. Very, like, someone's telling you this story. They are telling you the story of these two children. There is a narrator, an unknown, unfaced narrator, which I do like on occasion. I'm not super big into them, but I really, really like this series. And overall, I'm giving the series a 4.5 out of 5. And this book in particular got a 4.75. I thought it was one of my favorites. The first one I think was still my favorite though, but yes. The next book that I finished, I guess is kind of cheating to count this, but I did finish my textbook for school. This is Young Adult Literature From Romance to Realism by Michael Cart. This is the 4th edition. I had to read this for my YA selection course. It was actually very interesting, and I did a lot of highlighting and writing in it. It was good. I gave it a 4.5. Like, I had to rate it for the system, but honestly, I don't know how to rate textbooks, but this was something that taught me a lot about the history of YA and where it came from, where the different awards came from, and kind of how it developed over the years, because YA is not all that old. YA is less than 100 years old as far as it being used in ratings and book systems and stuff like that. So I thought this was very interesting. I don't know, I'm weird like that. Maybe it's not 100. I never know. Time is hard for me, like years. But no, it's good. It was interesting. I learned a lot. Cool. And I finished the class, so yay! The next book that I read, I actually DNF'd, and this one actually came as a surprise. I did not expect to DNF this book. I read My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. How far did I get in this book? I don't know how far I got into this book. I think I got like 2/3 of the way into this book and realized I did not care about the characters at all. I did not really care what was happening. I just kind of it stopped mattering to me, which is really unfortunate. And actually what ended up happening was because I was reading this in anticipation of a video I was planning on doing, and now I have scrapped that whole video idea because in order to do that video, I needed to read the sequel to this book, and that's just not happening. I could not get through this one. There's no way I could get through another one, unfortunately. So I'm learning that maybe some horror just aren't my thing. And this book, a lot of people really loved, and I can see why they loved it, but for me, it was just a miss. I honestly kind of got annoyed and a little bit bored with the main character. She's obsessed with serial killers to the point where she believes that she is living within a slasher movie, and she believes she needs to find the final girl who is going to survive this whole slasher thing. And there are things happening in this story, and by about halfway through, I was starting to believe her whole thing of like, yeah, I'm living in a slasher movie. And you're like, yeah, you kind of are. And then she just kind of lost me. It escalated to a point that for me didn't work, unfortunately. But you win some, you lose some, I guess. I don't know. Sorry. So the next book that I'm going to talk about is The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This book, other than being absolutely friggin' gorgeous, and I did get a hardcover, I had to order it from a third party, but it's so beautiful, and I am in love with this story. I absolutely adore this story. I loved it. I loved it so much. I have the sequel. I just haven't read it yet because I needed a break. Otherwise, I knew I'd end up in some sort of reading slump because the third book is not out until like next year because the second book just came out in April this year. This book follows two characters. We have Ivar and Lavina. Lavira, not Lavina, Lavira. Lavina didn't sound right. So Lavira is a girl who lives on the outskirts of this big city. She lives in the desert, and one day her tribe is attacked and she is basically kidnapped and then saved by soldiers and taken to the main city. And it follows her on her journey of kind of figuring out what to do with her life. And our other character, Ivar is someone who has been born into a library. He lives within this ginormous library that is the size of a mountain, and he and his siblings, their entire goal is to try to escape this mountain. And this book follows as their lives intertwine and they meet. A whole bunch of stuff happens. It's absolutely insane. I absolutely adored this writing style. It is slightly whimsical, but honestly, as I was reading it, all I could think of is that this is a bit of a love story to libraries and to books and writers in general. I think this is an excellent and well-told story. The library that is the main focus of this book is absolutely amazing. I would love to visit it. It sounds like I would get lost and die, but that's not the point. I'd still go visit it anyways. If you know, you know. So highly, highly recommend. I gave this a 5 out of 5. It's one of my favorite books of this year. I'm not gonna lie. I am on a high of reading right now. It's great. So This is actually the first book by Mark Lawrence I have ever read, so I'm very excited to read more of his stuff as well. And the last book that I actually just finished, the last book I'm going to talk about, is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I went and picked up a copy of this book because I listened to the audiobook of both this one and actually the book that wouldn't burn. I listened to the audiobooks of both of them from the library. Again, yay, shout out to the libraries, go for it. Before I bought them, because they aren't small books. This one's a little bit smaller. It's only 300 some odd pages. 400 and some odd pages. 408 pages, I think is what it said. This was so good. You may remember this book was actually on one of my anticipated releases for this year, and it did not disappoint. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I love this book, and I'm really upset that I now have to wait until February of next year for the sequel to this one. This follows Din, who is an assistant investigator, and he goes to a crime scene at the beginning of the book. It is a murder mystery, and at the beginning of the book, he goes to a crime scene where a man has been killed because a tree has spontaneously grown from within him and killed him within a minute. Like, the tree grew in a minute. Also, there's Leviathan. They're huge. Like, this book had so much going on, but it has one of the most subtle and intriguing magic systems I have ever read. And Robert Jackson Bennett's been very good at doing that kind of subtle magic in it, where you're more concentrated on the characters and what's going on than you are about the magics, but the magic still plays a huge part in his roles. I've already talked about Robert Jackson Bennett once in this video. This is the second book. This is the third book of his I've read this year. This one is basically Sherlock Holmes, but make it slight fantasy and add in this magic system, which I haven't explained yet. I should do that. So this magic system, basically, you're able to get enhancements to yourself. So it can be enhancements for strength, for speed, for intelligence and such. And our main character, Din, is an engraver. So basically what that means is he has an enhancement that allows him to have a memory that remembers literally everything, down to what people are wearing, what they were doing, what they said, word for word, and he can literally word vomit this back out. He uses his sense of smell in order to remember specific times and specific details because as an assistant investigator, because his boss, Anna, does not leave her house. She has a set of skills that actually causes her to become very overstimulated by everything in the world, which I get it. And she prefers the company of her books and to stay by herself, only needing Din around, and then that's it. And she's stupid smart. It's basically compared to Sherlock and Watson. Like, that's the relationship these two have. It's great. I honestly adored this book to the point where I finished it and I wanted to go back and reread it and re-listen to it. And I'm probably going to reread it again, maybe by the end of this year. If not, I'll reread it next year. The physical copy, hopefully, because I want to like note my favorite quotes and stuff in here, because there were some really, really good ones in this book. But highly recommend. I've been talking about this book for way too long. So that's what I got for you guys here today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's not my normal kind of like monthly wrap up, but I might do it like this just because I am going to be taking summer classes during this summer, and I'm just not sure that like doing monthly wrap-ups is going to work out quite so well. I also only read like 3 books in the month of April, so they're just not going to be interesting if I do it that way. So we're going to do this instead for now and see how it goes. So that's what I got. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. You know that really does help us in the long run. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep reading. Bye!